Update: my wife had an affair with her coworker. Thanks to everyone for the advice, concern, and resources. With everything going on, I haven't been able to respond to every comment or message, but they've been very much appreciated. This week has been the most excruciating. I feel like a helpless kid again who can only watch as the world around me falls apart. And I'm going through it without my wife, who has been my best friend and support. I was certain I didn't have the whole story. So yesterday I looked into contacting OBS. I knew I needed to hear what she had to say in order for me to get some clarity. She wouldn't have any agenda to lie or withhold whatever information she had from me. I found her FB account and wrote her on Messenger. She responded no more than 10 minutes later and offered to video call right then. I immediately replied that I was available. One look without a word, and I could tell she was going through a similar hell like me. She said that shortly after being escorted out of the workplace last Monday, she actually tried to get in contact with me, but couldn't find my details. In fact, one of the last things she said to my wife was threatening that she was going to tell me. When she was saying this, all I could think of was how my wife rushed home that day and how her sister told her that I needed to hear about the affair from her. I asked her if she knew more about what occurred during the team lead trip or was this really just an ONS, and how did she find out? What she told me confirmed my fears. The affair dates back to before the trip. Documented proof from texts that were of an intense emotional affair. All of this, OBS shared with me with screen share, and I could barely keep it together. She told me that back in January, she noticed that her husband was withdrawn and disinterested towards her. There were times she saw him texting my wife, but he would brush it off as work-related convos. The day before the trip, she went to the job to drop something off or so had forgotten, and she found in his office with my wife, standing close together, joking and smiling. She said the whole atmosphere between them felt flirty. When they noticed her, they parted, and my wife's face looked panicked while her husband went over it all together. She said it was then that she felt certain there was something going on between her husband and my wife, but she didn't address it because she wanted undeniable proof her husband couldn't escape from. After the trip, her so was more distant and dismissive. That night, she waited until he fell asleep and then checked his phone. She went to his text thread with my wife where everything was there to see, intimate texts back and forth before the trip. It started as an emotional cheating, others were of AP saying that it was impossible for him to focus at work whenever my wife was around. In these texts, it was clear that AP was the pursuer toward my wife, but that doesn't really make a difference because she never shut down his advances. Some of the pre-trip texts were AP bashing his wife and going off about repeated miscarriages. It was just plain disgusting with how he talked about her to my wife. He kept mentioning how maybe he needed a woman like my wife. There were texts from last Thursday night with AP inviting my wife to join the team for drinks, and texts AP sent to my wife the following morning which clearly revealed that they had relationships. At this point, there were no more replies from my wife after Thursday night. I didn't think it was possible for me to hurt any worse, but here I am. OSB said it took her everything to remain calm as she didn't want to alert her twins sleeping in the other room, but she didn't wake her husband up nor confront him immediately. She said that in her heart she was done with him, and that for her, he had crossed a line he couldn't come back from. She said she was more angry than she'd ever been during their marriage, and that through her anger, she was set on humiliating him like he had humiliated her. So she faked her smiles and acted like everything was fine and waited until Monday, where she was going to out him at work in front of his peers, underlings, and costumers. She said this confrontation had been brewing for a while now. Apparently, it was only a coincidence that my wife was at work that day as well. When OSB saw my wife with AP and another employee, she decided to target my wife, too. When she went on to calling out my wife tried unsuccessfully to get her to quiet down. OBS then started saying her husband had no signs of remorse in the slightest, but only anger at her public outburst. I learned from her that AP was fired the following day after the confrontation. She also kicked him out of the house, and said one of the hardest things in her life was having to explain this all to her twins. I had an idea of what she meant because I saw my own mom have to do the same thing after my dad. She said that this whole ordeal showed her who her husband really was, and while her husband pursued my wife, nonetheless my wife still had a part in the affair, and that as a woman, she had no sympathy or respect for my wife whatsoever. I told her I in no way fault her for that, and that she has every right. She actually apologized to me for her husband's role in the affair. I literally was at a loss for words for a moment, and then I apologized for the part my wife played, and she said that her and I are now a part of a club we never wanted to be in, a club that our SOs forced us in. She asked me about my wife and I told her that I honestly didn't know what I was going to do, but that I wasn't currently staying with my wife. She wished me all the best, and I did the same to her, and before ending the call, we exchanged numbers, so if we ever wanted to talk again. Every raw emotion was only heightened. I confided in my mom about what I learned and she still didn't voice any judgment, but I could tell that she's upset with my wife. A part of me feels great happiness that AP is losing everything, his job and his family, and that maybe he's out there suffering as well. But I'm not proud of that feeling. At the same time I feel immense guilt over that because a wife is losing her husband, and children are losing their family as they know it, those kids are in for a whole world of pain. I feel anger also towards my wife for doing this to us, for breaking our vows, and for putting my health in jeopardy. We did have relationships after she returned from the trip, and the post-trip texts hint that protection wasn't used. I do know I should resume contact with my wife regarding the information OBS has provided me with, and demand a timeline. But at the same time I feel even more lost than I was when I made the original post. I feel like I'm just drowning here. Comments. 1. Even if you agreed to her terms, full access to her phone etc., after a while she will resent it. She thinks it's something she is willing to do, but in the long run things like that don't work. Take care of yourself, OP. When mine ended, I decided that it was time to spend 100% on myself for a long while. 2. This OP. If you don't like something, make it known in a courteous and confident manner, but don't continue sailing on a sinking boat. 3. I read your first post and think I commented, and I'm so sorry that you're feeling even worse now. Don't rush to make any decisions. At some point, you may need to talk to your wife, even if it's just about finances or whatnot, but for now, take your time. Please consider therapy, and try to find one who specializes in marriage issues or infidelity. You will be okay. Just give yourself some grace and time. You're 28 and have known your wife your whole life. This will take time, no matter what resolution you come to. 4. Your wife left out the emotional affair. She also had relationships with you after she came back. That's a sign of manipulation. I think there is a high chance that she doesn't feel as much remorse as she lets on. I suspect she only told you because she was outed. It may be that the affair would have gone a lot longer if they weren't outed. Now let's look away from the affair from a moment. Look at yours and hers daily life. What kind of a person is she? Is she a people pleaser who avoids confrontation? Is she the kind of person who is loyal to her pleasure and not really morally upright? Look, AP was a bad person. A person who cares nothing about the feelings of others, in fact has no qualms about using them as tools. Too bad. He used her wife as a tool in conversations to seduce your wife, missing her so he could praise his wife by comparison. Similarly, it sounds like he was very charming towards your wife, shallow words of flattery. What's problematic here is that your wife is the kind of person who laps up personal attention from others, and will be flattered and lured by that. A person like that is much more likely to cheat. Good people are those who are strong, with integrity and good morals, who survive being tested. It seems your wife is the opposite of that. In my mind at least, that's not a good person to be with. In my mind, people who are people pleasers, who avoid confrontation, who are manipulative, loyal to their pleasure and with loose morals are the worst kind of partners. 5. This is the best, most succinct way I have ever seen that type of behavior/people described. When someone is in a relationship and talking negatively about their so to another person who is not a close friend, it is a huge red flag. A person with good morals would see it as such. An attention seeker who thinks they are special, or just a flat-out bad person, is the only personality type who likes this behavior. 6. You are going through an unimaginably tough time right now, and it is totally natural for you to feel all over the place. It's important to remember that you are not alone in this. Your wife has made a very serious mistake and she is also going to be struggling with a lot of intense emotions. What you are going through is tough, but it is possible to come out the other side. Here are some things that may be helpful for you to keep in mind. It is so important to have someone to talk to who will just listen and not judge you. Try to find a trusted friend or family member who can provide that support for you. Try to remember that you are not responsible for your wife's actions. She made a choice to cheat on you, and that is 100% on her. You did not do anything wrong. It is okay to be angry, but try not to let that anger consume you. It is only natural to want revenge when someone hurts us like this, but it will only end up causing you more pain in the long run. Focus on taking care of yourself right now. This is a really difficult time and you need to be gentle with yourself. Make sure to eat healthy foods, get enough sleep, and get some exercise if you can. Try to do things that make you happy and bring you peace. Finally, it is okay to seek professional help if you feel like you need it. Talking to a therapist can be incredibly helpful when working through tough emotions like this. As a final thought, it is completely up to you what you decide to do about your marriage. You may decide that you want to work through this with your wife and try to rebuild your relationship. Or, you may decide that this is too big of a betrayal to overcome and decide to end the marriage. There is no right or wrong answer, only what is best for you. I sincerely hope that whatever you decide, you are able to find some peace and healing. I hope that some of this was helpful. Please remember that you are not alone in this, we are here for you and want to help in any way we can. 7. Up. I am really sorry for you. And I hope we'll find someday your happiness back. Whatever you decide. Whatever you will do. One important thing, when you go for reconciliation, it is not you that has to do the work, it is her. Think about the power dynamic in the relationship from now on. It is her that has to show you that she is worth to be in a relationship with you. It is not on you to fix things. She has to do the work. If it is you who beg her to stay, then you will fail. She needs to beg you. She needs to work out a plan, what she will do to reconciliate. You might change also some things, but only if she has done a lot of work before. Never forget, if she demands, then she still do not respects you, and the whole reconciliation will most likely fail. If you try to control her, then you might feel in power, but the opposite is the case. She need to offer to be open with everything. With phones and locations, etc., she needs to do it by her own and not because you demanded it. If she is not offering a lot and do everything to gain your trust back and she starts to deal with you, then let her go. Because then she is not willing to do everything to get your trust and respect back. There are lots of informations out there, what you can do to a cheater to become trustworthy again. So far so good. But the most important point for me is that your wife need to find out what at her personality allowed her to cheat. The real reason is not you or the situation and the AP's influence. The real reason is seated in her personality. Lots of people are in a similar situation as your wife was, but they don't cheat. That's why your wife need find out what is wrong with her and work on that personality defect. I wish you all best and stay strong.